A couple weeks ago, as of recording, I had the pleasure of watching the Backrooms just before it left theaters in my area. And I have to say, I was pleasantly surprised by how good it was. This video isn't meant as a review of the movie by any means, but I do have a lot of praise to give it. I went in with middling expectations, but somewhat hopeful. And frankly, I'm glad all my expectations were surpassed easily. It's a great movie that left me thinking for a long time afterwards. About the plot and characters, themes and such, but mostly about internet horror itself, and how easily the Backrooms went from a joke of a concept to a full-fledged blockbuster. I remember when the movie was announced a while back, I personally didn't believe it was even real, kinda like the Skibidi Toilet movie or the Dead by Daylight movie.
The new Superman is...
The Trapper.
Fuck!
But then, obviously, it came out to a resounding success despite no one really thinking it would be anything special. Sure, the YouTube series existed, but the guy who made it was super young. People didn't think much of him, yet he made a pretty solid 9 out of 10 movie. And in my eyes, that's worth looking into. The Siren Head movie was already announced with Zach Cregger co-writing it, so something about the Backrooms formula has nested itself into big studios. Internet horror can clearly work, but not in the ways you'd think. That's mainly what I'm going to talk about in this video. Why the Backrooms worked, and why a lot of internet horror doesn't work. To do that, we're going to have to talk about some of the things that Backrooms does right. Or rather, the things it doesn't do wrong. A concept whose terminology I'm about to coin is list horror. Something that plagues far too many independent horror creations.
What happened, Rick? I thought you weren't the good guy anymore. Ain't that what you said? Even right here, right now, you ain't gonna fight for him. I'm a better father than you, Rick.
A lot of people were disappointed by the lack of entities and levels in the Backrooms, because it's what they've been accustomed to over the years. The movie does not use any of that shit, and I am so eternally grateful for it. Internet horror like the Backrooms is partial to lists. Basically, the whole structure of the thing itself relies on making a list of things that exist within. Sometimes the horror itself is literally naming things off in a sequence, or introducing monster after monster as a substitute for plot. Essentially, it's padding to make your universe seem more in-depth than it is. This is common in analog horror, and mascot horror. These types of media are, forgive me for saying this, but they don't exactly require much brain power to enjoy to their fullest. Their primary audience is children, after all. More often than not, they're more interested in becoming the next big thing rather than creating a memorable story. The list horror format really lends itself to trying to get your 15 minutes of fame and forget about it. A series off the top of my brainstem that falls victim to this is This Place Is Not Happy, the early AI meat packing plant analog horror. I remember seeing this when my state-mandated teenage analog horror phase was in full swing, and not knowing what AI would become, I enjoyed the visuals despite that looking back, it really is just fucked up pictures of farm animals. They show a little case file of the DNA experiments, then show a scary AI picture, and well, that's the content. When AI started being fucking bullshit and not a novelty anymore, they did switch to like higher effort sets, but it was the same formula. They only released a few videos in the series before seemingly pulling the plug due to lack of interest, I think. Okay guys, editor's note, I was wrong. Happy Meat Farms is part of a giant, like, 4-year-long ARG, spanning multiple YouTube channels and websites. It's got SpongeBob, it's got Sonic. I was wrong, but it was just about that one specific thing. Please don't click off the video yet. I still got important stuff to say. Please, thank you for your cooperation and your patience. A more infamous example of relying too much on lists is The Painter by Urban Spook. It's a much more well-known analog horror series than Happy Meat Farms, but even less well-regarded. Every episode is basically a Bioshock tape recording of an evil murderer who kills people and paints them, and the murderers are like gruesome to the degree of not even being entertaining anymore. Cartoonishly cruel is how I would describe it. That's not the problem that really plagues it though. It's, again, the lack of substance. The thing we're meant to focus on in The Painter is how evil the kills are and how scared we should be of the guy who did them. Actually, I just looked it up and it's a girl. Spoilers! Wow, what a subversion of expectations, right? Forgive me for not watching the entire series because it's genuine hot garbage. There really isn't any development beyond what's the next big kill, because that's what the audience is here for, right? Just a whole lot of spectacle over any substance.
My heart. I loved her. Wah.
This is where the Backrooms come in. If you haven't seen the movie but have seen a majority of Backrooms content online, you know that most of its fan engagement follows a similar formula. It's built in levels, with entities, it's got wikis cataloging the different shit you can find there, and there's a fucking lot of it. I never engaged with Backrooms fan content besides like Roblox slop games, ironically of course. So I was surprised to see the Backrooms wiki looking more like the SCP Foundation wiki, especially since the movie was my first real attempt to take the concept seriously. The original 4chan post mentioned something or other being able to hear you if you heard it. Naturally, people wanted to make their own interpretations of what dwelled within. While I don't want to shit on fan content because that's basically what it is, the Backrooms deserves to be unexplained, just by its very nature. It's a place outside of time and probably space. The creatures exist for some reason we can't really comprehend, and that's what keeps us coming back for more. Reducing each creature or phenomena or room to a file on a website detracts from the whole experience, no? The more you know about it, the less scary and interesting it is. Although I hadn't watched the YouTube series before the movie, I did to research this video, and the way it was handled was honestly kind of incredible. You can't go across 22 episodes without explaining it somewhat, but it's the gaps in knowledge that I really enjoy about it. Kane Parsons gives you the pieces and wants you to figure them out by yourself. That's what the abstract should be. With every episode adding more details, it feels like a fleshed out world, almost like it's evolving as a concept even without explicitly writing it as such. You unravel this mystery and realize there's more than you'd ever know about the Backrooms and how it affects the real world. Contrast this with the fan-made wiki. It doesn't feel like a world, it feels like a fan club. Each entry is like a wall in your imagination. Sure, it's a creative writing exercise for a lot of people online, but it has no real staying power.
You serious?
The movie and the YouTube series stuck with me because of how little they focused on explaining the Backrooms. It never felt like humans were in control of it, and maybe that's the problem. The list horror aspect of the Backrooms wiki feels like they've been tamed. They've lost their mystique. Obviously, it's unavoidable for a collaborative fan project. People want their shit to be seen, to feel like they're a part of something bigger. Ironically, the bigger Backrooms mythos is self-containing. It's harder for a newcomer to jump into something with this many articles and floors and rules. People who haven't interacted with the Backrooms in the slightest, and with like an IQ above 70, can come out of the Kane Parsons movie loving it. It's because you don't have to over-explain your world for people to fall for it. The concept just needs to be handled with care. The thing I love most about the movie was its focus on character development. There are really just 2 characters in the entire movie, with some minor ones interspersed. The audience cares about Clark and Mary though. We follow them for the whole runtime, exploring how they deal with the abstract. We see how it changes them, how it surfaces their fears and loathing in Las Vegas. Most importantly, we see how they try and explain what they're seeing, and they fail. They completely fail. Clark is wrong about so many things. He tries to map out the Backrooms and fails. He tries to adapt to the infinite and goes fucking insane because of it. He tries to tame something beyond himself and dies because of it. No! You don't see this in the formulaic Backrooms wiki. Yeah, you see people die and scary things happen to characters, but you, the reader, still know enough about the danger to overcome it. The movie tells you nothing. You're in there with Clark experiencing it for the first time. And it's all just incredible. Kane Parsons does something that no other Backrooms creator does. He remembers the Backrooms is a setting that good characters have to be in. Yeah, I get that it has a mind of its own and settings can be characters, but It just worked so well to put normal-ish people in this abnormal setting and see how they evolve. I don't need an encyclopedia of knowledge on the Backrooms to marvel at Clark's downfall. Think of it this way. Say I'm watching a story that takes place in Ohio. I don't need nor do I want extensive knowledge of Ohio's trade routes or mineral deposits or gubernatorial disputes to enjoy the story that's unfolding before me. You could technically write about all that stuff, but you're trying, hopefully at least, to write a work of fiction that moves people. That doesn't need every inch of your setting to be explained. All it needs is interesting people to operate within it. There's a reason people still say less is more, after all. I think a lot of the reason that many fan-created internet horror stories aren't driven by normal characters is that they're just hard to write. When you come up with a big monster, naturally you're going to want to tell people about it. It's easy to make monsters interesting. People have been writing epic tales of heroes slaying them for literally all of recorded human history. It's a different beast entirely to take your average Joe and make him compelling in a world of monsters. The Backrooms movie succeeds at this, as you've come to know. Other horror, not so much. Even internet giants of analog horror like Local 58 or Gemini Home Entertainment don't do this. It works slightly better since they're self-contained and genuinely really scary, but I do want to bring up the fact that there just aren't many compelling characters in either of these works. Granted, it's 90% justified because they're all fucking dead from whatever evil shit the world throws at them, but still, a good story needs good characters. And I believe both of these works suffer from not really having any. While researching this video, I was watching a lot of analog horror and my pre-existing opinions kept getting validated. I tried series that I never interacted with before so I could know my opinions held some value. The Mandela catalog was okay, it had good characters, I think. Just not my favorite thing in the whole world. Same with the Walton Files, they're both passable works of fiction. But one of these series that surprised me with how good it was is The Oldest View. The one about this thing.
Holy crap! You are creepy as shit.
I reasonably thought it was just another slop horror series meant for Roblox games and game theory thumbnails. But it turned out to be a legitimately character-driven, scary-ass series. And you wanna know why it was so good? It's also made by this fucker. What a coincidence, right? The Oldest View is a YouTube series just like the Backrooms was originally. It's about a random urban explorer vlogger guy who finds an abandoned mall with a spooky spookster in it. And it is great. The way Kane Parsons handles liminal spaces is honestly inspiring. It's like he's the only one who can actually harness what makes these places scary. And you wanna know my favorite part of The Oldest View? How little we're given. There isn't much deeper lore here. The rolling giant was made, abandoned, and now it moves by itself. Why? We don't know. And why would we need to know? The Oldest View is short and simple. There honestly isn't much beyond this guy who isn't Rasputin chasing another guy with a camcorder. It wouldn't benefit from a long-driven explanation of all the monster's inner workings. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and for me, that is a breath of fresh air. Having such a simple series to enjoy differs immensely from the series that want to continue expanding their lore indefinitely. The main problem with the list horror formula is that it equates that the success of horror comes from quantity. When you make one horror monster, people will want more and more and interest will rise in tandem with the amount of content within your series. This interpretation is flawed in almost every possible way. It's very clear that the collaborative Backrooms writing tries to one-up itself constantly, and that leads to a bunch of half-baked ideas, because interest only rises with quantity on paper. In reality, people want to get invested with what they already have. Here's how it goes. A level or entity of the Backrooms is created, fleshed out, and fully explained. People have their fun with it, but since the story can't end because it's a collaborative project, people get bored and start seeking out something new. There's no satisfying conclusion. Hell, there's not even any cliffhanger that leaves you wanting more. In order to keep the limelight on the Backrooms, you just repeat the cycle. New monsters, new floors, etc. All of it completely explained. I could never get into this execution of the Backrooms since there was nothing to be invested in. If someone is looking to delve deeper into the Backrooms with their own interpretations and theories, how can they do that when almost all of the ground is covered? With every new level or creature, the Backrooms loses a bit of its mystique, and it just turns into any other place. Let's compare this to how Kane Pixels handle the Backrooms. First, with the YouTube series. He keeps them short, vague. You see monsters, but you don't really know who or what or why they are. He creates a story first, one with a lot of stuff left up to the viewer's interpretation. Because the scariest part of the Backrooms is never going to be what you can see, it's what you can't see. And then we have the movie. It doesn't follow Async or any formal Backrooms research team, it follows a failing architect and his therapist. They stumble into another world with zero knowledge of what it entails. Their exploration is the perfect premise for a story set in this world. One where we, as humans, try to explain the abstract through a human lens. But obviously, we can't. The movie does such a great job of making the Backrooms out to be otherworldly. There is so much to see and do, but it's not a place that wants to be explained. You shouldn't feel safe here for even a millisecond. It does this, mostly, without monsters. There is a singular hostile being in the movie, not an endless list of villains of the week. But the idea that there is more is enough to make the Backrooms seem all-encompassing. It just works. You don't have to do anything beyond that to make the audience fear your infinity. This isn't to say that you can't introduce a bunch of creepy creatures and still have a great story. List horror adjacent properties can work if done well, it's just that they're usually not. And establishing the precedent that every independent horror creation needs to follow this formula is killing a lot of people's creativity. At this point, I should probably mention the SCP Foundation since I've been comparing the sloppish Backrooms wiki to it a lot. You gotta understand that despite looking nearly identical, these two franchises could not be further apart in both quality and intent. The SCP Foundation was always a blank slate in my eyes. When the point of the series is to try and explain the unexplainable, you can put out a steady stream of articles to fill out your world building and have it work. It's just that the setting is just the world, and the wacky crazy shit is in it. Compare this to the Backrooms where the setting is the wacky crazy shit and you kinda see where I'm coming from. The whole point of the SCP Foundation background is to appear mundane and disinteresting. It lets the anomalies take priority as meager humans try to explain and contain them. The format of the articles makes them feel alive. Something about the special containment procedures being first and foremost paints a beautiful picture of a researcher frantically reading them after something's gone horribly wrong. Obviously, the Backrooms wiki has a survival guide at the very bottom of the article, as one does. SCP writers also take themselves more seriously. A good SCP has a lot to say about itself. A good writer doesn't want their story to become lumped in with the rest. The best SCP entries have a lot of time and care put into them, while still adhering to the format. Most of the Backrooms entries I've read are short. Very short. And they do genuinely feel like someone trying to jump on the bandwagon, just inserting themselves into a project rather than writing something they're confident in. Something that can stand alone if necessary. Backrooms levels and entities rely on the original concept of the infinite liminal space being interesting enough to hold your attention. And yeah, it is. But I want to know about people's adventures through the mundane yellow halls and their perspectives. Not about the tens of millions of monsters you're not even guaranteed to see down there. With SCPs, you can make your own standalone thing, but every Backrooms entity and level has to be within the Backrooms itself, and that debilitates a lot of people's writing. A creepy monster that may work perfectly as its own short story gets crippled just by association with the Backrooms, being forced to fit into the rules established in this place that's not supposed to have any rules. I've read way more SCPs than Backrooms entries, so maybe it's not a fair point, but the only Backrooms entity I actually enjoyed reading was the very first one. And it's just about humans. But it's cool. It's very cool even. It takes advantage of the setting like none of the others I've read had. And then you go to the next one, it's a scary guy who grabs you through a window. and the one after that is the smilers. The level entries are a little better, being way longer and clearly the focus of the project. Still, though, having all of these cataloged and explained, I feel just takes away from the whole experience. You can have different places within the backrooms, but it should be relatively random in my eyes. All the scary places with different shit in it should just be part of the main thing, not sectioned off into their own little corners. Having it all explained is probably comforting to those in-universe, but it just fails to hold my interest like a good SCP entry can. Don't get me wrong, the SCP Wiki has its fair share of evil, fucked up guys that kill you until you're dead, but it has a lot more than that. Take SCP-8980 for instance. It is a perfect SCP in my eyes, taking full advantage of the bureaucratic style of Foundation and the formatting of articles. I'm not going to say another goddamn thing about this SCP because it is so good you have to read it yourself. Not right now though, because if you pause and go read it, you'll probably forget to watch the rest of this video. It's a long ass SCP, it's basically a book. You do read books, right? An SCP I'm more comfortable with spoiling is SCP-3001, the Infinite IKEA. Yeah, it's just the fucking Backrooms, but done better. It's famous for a reason though. Bringing back my point from the beginning of the video, you've got a crazy setting with creepy creatures, but the article is still character driven. You basically go through a survivor's point of view as you get trapped and try to escape the IKEA. Sound familiar? Simple character growth is what differentiates SCP-3001 from, say, a level of a Backrooms that's an infinite IKEA. Because the Backrooms wiki has dug this hole for itself that requires constant excess until your original intent behind the story is unrecognizable. Again, less is more. SCP writers don't have to stress just how scared you should be of their stories. They just let them and their characters speak for themselves. You could view this video as bullying poor children who write Backrooms articles for fun, but I'd like to position it as constructive criticism. The criticism in question being, your writing is bad. Change it. Please. If you ask me personally, I think the Backrooms wiki never should have been created in the first place. It's just a bad idea. Maybe I'm repeating myself when I say this, but the SCP Foundation works because it's wacky shit in a normal world. The Backrooms wiki doesn't because the Backrooms itself is supposed to be the wacky shit. Adding more and more on top of that is just the folly of list horror. It becomes dull. However, I would never ever discourage someone's efforts in creative writing. I'd just like to steer you into the right direction if I could, because I decide what good writing is, you know? Only me. If you want to write about entities and mysterious objects and phenomena, write for the SCP Foundation. It just kind of fits better, you know? Having a more grounded setting is key to writing about fantastical subjects. If it's the Backrooms specifically you want to write for, do it in the form of a tale. The Backrooms wiki does have these little short stories as a part of it, but they're few and far between, especially compared to SCP tales. In my eyes, this is just a better way of going about writing Backrooms shit. You can make up whatever entities and scary rooms you want, but you've also got to focus on the characters that go through it all. Have fun with it. If you want to write an article or flesh out your scary monsters, have your character find that shit on their journey. It gives the reader a vessel to connect with, and a frame of reference for just how spooky scary the monsters can be. If somehow you aren't convinced, this is literally just what the movie does, bar for bar. I realize not everyone can write amazingly like Kane Parsons can, but everyone is allowed to try. Who knows, maybe you too can make a blockbuster movie at 20 years old. You just have to have the right direction. You have no idea how much your creativity may be getting dulled from a format. After seeing list horror fail in hundreds of different places, you'd be hard pressed to convince me it can work outside of fringe cases. A time and place for everything, right? If you saw my last video, you know how much I value good writing, I say pretentiously. Yeah, I was 13 once and wrote about Arthur Morgan killing Patrick Bateman, you know how it is. But I think my opinion is just as valuable as anyone else's on this topic. Especially because the patterns you start to notice as you write become very clear. Something like Terrifier falls victim to the same tropes as the Backrooms, just going for more grisly kills after another and begging to be cataloged in a kill count video. Obviously, this is because Terrifier is made for children, and 40-year-old men who behave like children. But that's just the type of audience list horror accumulates. It's literally quantity over quality. When you want to make a quick buck, this is fine. God knows, this shit makes bank. But if you want to make something meaningful that people will talk about as a sincere piece of art, go with a more character-focused story. Your big scary monster can definitely wait. Write the guy who survives it first. Thank you for watching the video, everyone. I'm not doing the shit where I apologize for how long it's been every single video. I don't give enough of a fuck. See you in the next one. Damn, I really hope the Backrooms movie is still popular when this shit gets out.